Yes, so my name is Camilo Angarita. I'm the OSDU Platform Manager at Aker BP. And today I want to talk a bit more about the daily operations and monitoring part that we have within the platform team itself. So for this, we have been using an in-house tool that I developed for the platform team, and we have named this OSDU Portal. As you can see here, the idea is that this is a Python-based workbench for early phase data engineering on top of the OSDU Data Platform. So for the presentation, let's start with just a very short introduction on why and how we started actually with this application. Then we will go through all the different modules for this tool, and finally a conclusion, a couple of takeaways on this. Well, so the first thing when we actually go for the OSDU platform is just to check with the cloud service provider. You can basically get the implementation on any of those. And once this implementation is already there, so it's good that you get all these standard APIs. So you have the core services plus the DMSs and so on. So with this, now the next step is actually to check that these services are actually working, so you can make use of those. For this, we have a couple of different tools, like for example, Postman. In this case, it's just basically to include the configuration for your instance, data partition, and so on, and prepare a couple of requests to those core services and check that you get a proper response. So that part is working fine. Then from the OSDU community, we have already some other tools. For example, the OSDU CLI, which is actually making easier this approach. You can go through all these different services. And then we have also the admin UI, which is also providing an interface on top of this. So it's making things even easier. So we have been using also these tools as well. And then we jump to some new challenges, like for example, be able to easily switch to different instances or data partitions, and then also to run specific workflows for monitoring and how to extract some value out of these different services and the different schemas as well. For this, what we were doing is actually to prepare a couple of Python scripts. That was the easiest way. And based on previous experience, managed to include more UI components on top of these scripts. Then we just containerize that as an application and deploy that internally in the company. So this is how OSDU Portal started. With this application, we saw that we were actually getting a kind of a sustaining growth in terms of the core capabilities for the platform. So this means ingestion, exploration, and monitoring for all the services, plus the products that we have in the platform itself. In the same time, we got the future-proofing part with this implementation. The idea is that basically everything that we can see for these core services plus the DMSs, we can get new ideas, prepare those as a Python script, and then include that as a new functionality or module easily within the application itself. So we can experiment, validate these approaches, and easily materialize. So now let's jump to the application itself. I have some screenshots, but if the network is fine, we will be able to actually take a look at the application. So here on the right side, we have the content itself of the application, and on the left side, we have a panel where we can see all the different modules. We have 6 modules in this case. And below, we can see a section where we can actually log in. So this is connected to the identity service provider for the company. And an important point is that this is multi-tenant by configuration. Basically, you can include as many tenants as you want. So this is the instance or the data partition. For this case, let's connect to one development partition. So as we can see here in the homepage, the first section will present a health check for all the core services and some DDMSs. In this case, we have Wellbore and Seismic. Then we have a section to get an overview for particular data products or schemas. We can check, for example, for field. And we will see that we have 2 different versions for this schema and 141 records on the latest version. Now let's move to another module, in this case, the Data Explorer. Basically, here we can go through all the schemas that are registered already in the platform, well, for the partition that we are connected to. And we can run some specific filters, like for example, the authority and source. In this case, we are checking the OSDU well-known schemas. We can see that we have 800 different options here. Let's continue with the same case for field, where we see that we have two versions in this case. Then we can see also the schema details, like what's the description for this, all the different attributes. For those attributes, what's the type, what's the description, if those are mandatory or not, and also the entity relationship diagram. Then if we just scroll down, we can also include more attributes in the query string, just to narrow down a bit the records that we want to actually see there. Then that will present a summary of the records. Again, we have 141 records, where we can see the ID, name, and schema. If we continue scrolling down, we can actually select the specific record. We will see the versions. Here we have only one. We will see the raw file itself in JSON. Then it will present the ACLs, the owners, viewers, legal tags, and relevant countries, and the content, where we have first the metadata, that's the header with the ID, the schema itself, who created this and at what time. If there's more than one version, it will show also who modified this and at what time. Then the content itself. Something important here is that this is checking my access to this specific record. So that means that if I'm part of the owners, I will be able to actually edit this record. And then just click Save. If I'm including something, this will just create a new version on top of the one that is there. Now let's move to another module. Let's skip for now the data operations. This is actually the most interesting one, so we will have it at the end. Now let's take the data monitoring part. This is divided in two sections, one for data and the other one for platform. So the first one will allow us to actually select again a specific schema. Let's continue with field. And it will present a summary again. So it's pretty much the same that we got from the previous one in Explorer, where we will see the table with the IDs, names, source, and so on. Now, for that specific schema that we have selected, we can also run an analysis for the linked entities. This actually is a very interesting one. So the idea here is that we will go through all the records and it will check what is actually linked in that way. It could be that what's the operator that is running that field, or in what country it is, or what's the license that the field is part of. So then it will check that we have 114 different linked entities within those records. From those, we have 70 that actually exist in the partition, and 44 of those are not existing. This is very important to check, because if this is happening, that means that we have potential issues in some workflows. We are referencing something that actually doesn't exist in the platform. So no worries, because we have this number, it was just done for the example here. Then we have some extra functionalities here. Like, for example, take a look at the logs for the workflow service. It's pretty common to use actually this one, OSDU ingest. That's the one we use with the manifest. And here we will check the summary of the logs. So it's basically checking the run IDs. We can see when started, when finished, what's the current status, if that is still running, and who submitted this. Now let's move to another module. Now we have the APIs collection. In this case, the idea is that we have a functionality that is pretty much the same that we can get from Postman. So this is reading all the API specification files. So this will present all the services that we have in OSDU. For example, let's select the entitlements. It will show the different APIs that we have there with the endpoints. Let's select one that is simple, maybe just to get the version information. Then we'll present the parameters that we need to include. In this case, we don't need to include anything, and just to send a request, and we will get the response back. It's important to check here that we don't need to include the partition or the user credentials, because that's already included. We are already connected to that partition. Now let's take a look at the governance module. So this is basically for the platform governance part. We will go through the main services in this case. So starting with entitlements, and that will present the different groups that I'm part of based on the different categories. So we have users, data, and services. Something that is actually really good from OSDU is that for example, in this case, for this application, we can create a group to provide the proper access to the application. In this case, we have this users OSDU Portal guest. So it will check if I'm part of that group. If that's the case, then I will get access to the application. Now, presenting all the groups here, so we can check, for example, data lake viewers. It will show who is part of this group. That will be for users and applications as well, and maybe some other groups. And based on the permissions, you will be able to actually manage it. So you can include and remove members from there. Now moving to the legal tags part on this module. So we can see what are the ones that exist already in that partition, and then we can also create new ones and modify the one that exists already. Again, that depends on the permissions that the user have. Now moving to some other tools that we have under governance. For example, we have the data product ACL monitor. In this case, if we continue with the same for field, this will present the different combinations that we have in terms of ACLs for those records. So in this case, we have two different combinations, and we can see the number of records with this specific combination. There might be some cases where we actually need to set or normalize these combinations for all the records, so we can do that from here. Another functionality in this case could be the one to scan the access for that specific partition. This will be just providing a list of the different users and applications with the access to the specific partition. Well, so moving now to the data operations part, we can start, for example, with the manifest ingestion. So in this case, if we have already prepared a manifest that will be as a JSON file, then it's just to include it here. We can also set the ACLs, owners, viewers, legal tags, and relevant countries. And this will allow us to actually ingest this into the platform easily. So I have prepared already a JSON file from here. That's for geological formation. So it will present a preview how the data looks like. Well, again, we will need to set the ACLs and all the parameters here. And then we can just ingest these records. By default, it's using the workflow service, but we can also use the storage service. Now let's use this bulk ingestion part. In this case, if we have an Excel spreadsheet or a CSV file with different records that we want to ingest into the platform, but that will be for a well-known schema. So we can do that from here. It's just to load again that CSV. I have already one for field from NOD, which is basically the public database in Norway. And then we need to select specifically that mapping. So I have prepared one that is for that well-known schema. This will run the transformation. We'll show you here a preview of the data. And then if everything looks fine, we can just ingest these records. Now maybe you are wondering where this mapping is actually coming from. So we have another part to handle the different mappings for this application. The idea here is that, well, basically we created just a custom schema to handle this. So we include some attributes where the application can actually read this and run the transformation. So here we have the one for the field from NOD to the well-known schema. We have all the benefits from using these records in OSDU, so we can have the access control, owners, viewers, legal tags, and relevant countries. And all the attributes that we need for the mapping, like what's the name, the source, the property that we want to use as ID for the different records when we are doing the transformation, the description for that schema, and then the input and output values that we will get. We can also specify the type for those. So that's the mapping part. Now moving to reference ingestion. So as you may know, we have three different categories, fixed, open, and local. In this case, we continue using the same approach where we can establish the ACLs, owners, viewers, legal tags, and relevant countries. And then it's just to select the specific category that we want to ingest. If we select only fixed, we can see that we have 61 schemas. Well, if we include the other categories, well, we will have more schemas to be ingested. So then it's just to select it and run the ingestion. Now, we have a placeholder here under the data operations module, and the idea is that any new idea, something that you want to test, that can be included based on a Python script. So the progress is that you prepare the Python script, you just check that locally, then you can include this as a new module within the application. So one example here is this functionality to ingest trajectory via TXT file. So the idea is that, for example, from this data source, that is Discos, we can get some TXT files for trajectories. I have already one here in the folder. And the functionality, what we'll be doing is going through that specific, sorry, something happened there, but yeah, it's running. So it's going through that specific file, is just identifying the specific wellbore. If that exists in the partition, if that's the case, then it will verify if we have some trajectories attached to that wellbore. If that's the case, then we can check here. We have already one trajectory for that specific case. So we can decide if we want to include that as a new record or just override the one that exists already. And when I say override, it's actually not replacing, but it's just creating a new version. So you will get the entire lineage. That will present the trajectory, the ID, the survey name, or the wellbore that it managed to identify. And then we can, again, set the ACLs, legal tags, relevant countries. We will get also a preview, that's for the metadata, then for the dataset itself, and then a 3D preview for that trajectory. So we can verify that if everything looks fine, again, we can just click and ingest that trajectory into the partition. Well, so that's all the different functionalities from the applications. So now let's move back to the slides. Well, so for the conclusion, so we can see that with this tool, we got some simplified workflows, basically for everything that we need to test and monitor on the daily basis. And with this, I mean the exploration, ingestion, monitoring, without juggling multiple tools or APIs. This is extensible by design, so that means that basically anything that you want to experiment with the different services, that could be the core services, DTMSs, or maybe combinations as well, you can easily just create some Python scripts, then include this as new functionalities or modules within the application. And then we have the community-driven vision for this. So from Aker BP, we are already working on open sourcing this to be shared with the entire OSDU forum. The idea is that we can foster collaboration and inspire enhanced vendor solutions. So yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir. That was fantastic. So are there any questions, please, anyone would like to ask? Over here? Okay, just give me 1 second, please. I've gone the whole week without tripping over anything. There you go, thank you.
I just have a specific question on what you were showing for the trajectory ingestion. Did you need to have that OSDU wellbore ID inside the trajectory file?
Well, so basically, at least in this case, for that functionality, it's checking the wellbore name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, please? Okay. Well, can we please show our appreciation? Thank you.
Good.